Okay, so this is the last piece of hardware or virtual hardware that we're going to install into our lab environment. So we've already installed pfSense, which is acting as our firewall and router. We've installed Kali Linux in a separate LAN. And then in the eCore LAN, we've got two Windows virtual machines set up and a Metasploitable 2, which is a vulnerable virtual machine. So now we're going to install the domain controller. So we can download the server from this link from Microsoft, select download the ISO. You'll have to register, and then you can download the ISO for Windows Server 22. Now I've already downloaded it, so we're ready to go ahead and install it. So from VirtualBox, we'll go to New, and I'm just going to name this domain controller. And choose the folder that we want the virtual machine to be stored in once it is built. Then we go to the ISO. Choose the ISO. We are going to skip the unintended, and then we will select next. Under the memory, we're going to give it a little more, just 4 gigabytes. And once again, how much memory you give these virtual machines is dependent on how much memory you have on your host. Now this domain controller is just going to be acting as a domain controller. So I'm going to give it 2 CPUs and 4 gigabytes of RAM. Click next. We'll just keep it at the default. 50 gigabytes should be plenty. We'll click next. We can review everything, make sure it's correct, and then select finish. Now we want to go to settings. First thing we'll set up is the network. We want to change this to internal network, and we want LAN 1. From there, we can go ahead and go to System, disable the floppy, move the hard disk to the top, and then the optical. Select OK. Now we're ready to start it. So to start it, we just select Start. And it will start to power up. Choose your language. Install now. Okay, so we're going to go with the standard evaluation desktop experience. That has all the functions that we need. The data center would have some more functions, but not anything that we would need. So we'll keep it as simple as possible. We do want the desktop experience. We accept the license, click next. We're doing a custom install. We select new and then apply. Click OK, and then next. And we'll pause the recording while it installs. Okay, so now we're prompted to enter the password for the administrator, so go ahead and do that. And then select Finish. Okay, so Now to log in, of course, it's asking us to press Control Alt Delete, but we can't do that for a virtual machine on the host because then the host would think that we're trying to enter Control Alt Delete. So go to Input, Keyboard, then Insert Control Alt Delete. And now that gives us the login. So go ahead and log in with the password that you just created. Okay, so before we go any further, let's go ahead and install the guest editions. So from devices to insert guest edition CD. Then we open File Explorer. Then open the CD drive. Just as we did with the Windows machines, we are going to run the VBox Windows Editions -AMD 64, and we're going to run it as administrator. Just click through the default values. Okay, so then we want to go ahead and reboot it. I'll pause the video as it reboots. Okay, it's rebooted. So once again, we need to go Input, Keyboard, Insert, Control Alt Delete, and then we type in the password. What we want to do is go ahead and rename the server. So as we did before, type in name and then rename the server. Select rename this PC. So since this is the eCore domain controller, I'm just going to name it eCore-DC. And then select next. So it's going to ask us to restart. So we'll go ahead and restart again. And once again, I'll pause during the restart. Okay, so it's restarted. Once again, we'll hit the keyboard to select Control Alt Delete and then type in the password. All right, so our server is up and running. Now it's time to configure it. So first thing we'll do is go up to the Manage, then select Add Roles and Features. We can just click Next. We can click Next again. We can go ahead and click Next. All right, so the first thing that we want to configure is Active Directory Domain Service. So we'll select Add Features. Then we can just select Next. Next again. Next. We'll go ahead and select Restart the destination server if required. And then we'll click Yes. Now we can just go ahead and click Install. And it will start installing. Okay, it's finished. And now this is a very important step here is go ahead and select Promote this server to a domain controller. Basically what a domain controller is it's a server that performs Active Directory functions. We want, at this point, we want to add a new forest. You can call this what you want. I'm calling it ecore.local. And then select Next. Here you select input the password. And ensure that domain name system server is checked. Select next. Now we can select next. Don't worry about the warning. In here, we'll just, for the NetBIOS domain name, eCore, just confirm that that is correct and then select next. And select next again. And next. Once these prerequisite checks are done, then we'll be able to click install. So we've passed all the prerequisite checks. So we can go ahead and select install. So once the installation is complete, it's going to want to restart. Okay, now it's getting ready to restart. Okay, so it's restarted. So we do the keyboard input again to log back in. Okay, once again, I'm going to squeeze this together. For some reason, that's what it takes to go to full screen. Make it easier to read. So we're going to go back to manage, add roles and features. So we're going to select next again, next again, and next one more time. So now what we want to install is the Active Directory certificate services. So that was the first check mark there. And I select add features. Then we can select next. Then we can select next. Select next again. Make sure certificate authority is checked and we can select next. Once again, we'll select restart if needed and we'll click yes when the pop-up comes up, and then we can click install. Okay, so this is important also. So it's finished, but we need to configure the Active Directory certificate services on the destination server. So we just need to click that. And we can select next. We want to select the certificate authority and then click next. Keep enterprise CA, click next. Keep the root CA, click next. And we'll create the private key so we can click next. We'll just go with the default, SHA-256, click next. Review that, everything seems to be in order, so we can click next. We'll just keep the 5 years is fine, so we'll click next. Next again. Then we'll select configure. All right, so we have configuration succeeded. So congratulations, you've completed the initial Active Directory and certificate services configuration. In the next video, we'll configure users and groups and policies on our domain controller. And then in our last video, we will go ahead and have our Windows machines join the domain.